I'd been working on independent films in New York and with Todd Haynes, and I worked on Hal Hartley film and a bunch of smaller independent films, and thought I would try myself, and so I wrote River of Grass and went back to Florida, you know, to an area I knew where I had grown up. And yeah, it was the idea of playing with a lot of myths, sort of the anti-hero road movie myths. And I would say my references are very close to the surface.
We purchased our new home through a city auction. The previous owner had murdered her husband and buried him inside the shower wall. Bobby said aside from being affordable, the house was also a good conversation piece. I haven't thought about this woman and wondered what made her act so violently. I guess it wasn't any one big thing, but a lot of little things that just grew deeper and deeper under her skin.
I made River of Grass in 1993. And so there were some years of working, and then I tried to scrape the money together to get to make this film, which was, made on credit cards and things stupid like that. And so then we shot it on 16 millimeter, and Larry Fessenden, who stars in the film, he was the editor and also teaching me to edit at the same time and teaching me about sound design and sort of a little bit of learning as I went in a lot of respects. I was flying really blind in a lot of ways. And eventually I discovered Portland. Todd Haynes moved from New York to Portland, and I started coming to visit Todd. On one of those visits, I met John Raymond, and I read his first novel. He sent me a short story, Old Joy. I worked on this TV show so I could save enough money to shoot in 16, and I didn't know if it was going to be a feature or short film. I think we were 6 total, and my dog, Lucy. We were just a small group going out each day and shooting for 2 weeks.
Yo, 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 yo. There. On the tree.
I don't know how we could have missed that.
I'm telling you, man. This is a very special place. If you can't see the little arrows at night, you can't get in.
I think John had written the story. The story wasn't that old, but it has a sort of like loss of progressiveness kind of themes to it. That these two guys are sort of out trying to find in the woods, I think, a different kind of idea of a lifestyle in America that was slipped away.
Don't bother anybody, okay? Be right back with a treat. Hey. What did I say? Don't be a nuisance. We don't need that.
It seemed at the time that, and it was true, there was a real outward, like you could really come out, and the right was really talking about poor people as if they were just such a drag on America. During the Bush years, if you haven't made your way, it's clearly, because you haven't followed the rules or you haven't taken advantage of all there is to take advantage of. And so Wendy and Lucy was sort of this looking at someone who has no net under them and is trying to get a toehold out of sleeping in her car, and and how easy is that really to do in America if you are starting with nothing? Can you really get out of your situation? Michelle said, oh, she wanted a role like the Will Oldham role. And so she seemed like she was up for it. So yeah, little by little, she came and got involved with us in this. John Raymond found the story of Stephen Meek, who was a real person who took 200 wagon trains into the desert for a shortcut trip out in 1845. And so this was the sort of starting point for this fictional situation. So we really focused on these three families and the landscape of Oregon High Desert, which is where the actual wagon trains went, and some of the places we really shot. And it was a long, long period of scouting out in the desert and trying to figure out how this story could manifest itself on these really open plains in a story that was requiring quite a lot of surprise and things you didn't see. So we really found ourselves with the tools and the things that the pioneers would have. So there was this time where there was a shift in the filmmaking where you went from the research of what they would do, how would you tie this knot, how would you lower this wagon? And so there was a lot of conversations like that of figuring our way out of things. It was a very physically challenging film. Some friends of Jonathan Raymond's and his partners had old friends had an organic farm in southern Oregon, and John started getting interested in the small politics that were happening on that farm, and he started taking me down to the farm.
How long until multinational corporations understand that they can't make a profit off a dead planet? So let the revolution begin. All around the globe, an army of individual citizens must rise up and take a stand for the future, for the people, and for the planet.
It came from that place in this small micro political things that were going on in the group of the smallest politics. That was like the first interesting part of it. I just started focusing on that, like the idea of a fundamentalist, someone who's absolutely sure about something. That was kind of the beginning challenge, was really about dealing with the idea of someone who's going to do a violent action based on a pure thought. The Malloy short stories came from 2 collections of hers. 3 women just sort of in different lines of work and different types of women. The first story takes Laura Dern and Jared Harris are sort of the center of that story, and she's a workman's comp lawyer dealing with a high-maintenance client, and she's working in, a small town in Montana.
Hey.
I was expecting your voicemail.
You got me.
I thought you had a meeting.
I did. It's a thing done. The lawyer said you have no case, and my client said, okay.
Just like that?
Just like that. He repeated the same things I've been saying for the last 8 months. It'd be so lovely to think that if I were a man, I could explain the law and people would listen and say, okay.
And the middle story was a story called Sandstone, and I remember when I read it, and I wonder why Malloy put that story in her collection. Like, it just kind of got by me. And in her story, it was a young couple with a kid, and they're more of a California family migrating to Montana and building an authentic house. And they want this limestone that someone else owns, and they are intent on getting it from this elderly man.
Look, quail.
Oh, yeah.
I hear them all the time. Their call is like, it goes. Sounds like, how are you? How are you? And then the answer, it goes.
I'm just fine. I'm just fine.
So yeah, it was really like making 3 short films almost, one right after the other. So you were really constantly gearing up for the next. But they were different and they had things in common, and they were all little bit of studies about like who has the power in a situation and how you maintain your power and how you use your power and who has less power and this sort of thing, and how you work in a community and individually, and all those things are kind of floating in those stories also.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good night.
John's novel was The Half-Life, which it moved between 1820 and contemporary times, and it was way out of my scope. So we, over decades, talked about how we would ever be able to make a smaller version of it with the same themes. So First Cow finally came about. The invention of the cow for the script was kind of the big undertaking, the way that it all made everything work. And this big influx to the area, and there's trappers and sailors, and we had sort of all our groups of people like that were playing other roles, you know, in people that worked for the fur trade, and which was kind of based on the Hudson Bay Company. And but again, already there are lines of power, and so we're following Cookie and King Lou, who are come together based on what they don't have, and they join together to try to make some kind of domestic life for themselves in this sort of macho world, and also to see if they can, you know, get to a point of having security and get a foot up in it.